with the reauthorization of ESA. That's the new piece of legislation that is on the federal level to nationalize education. So
yes,
it's a big debate.
Now, is there a vote coming up soon, or what's?
Well, there's a bunch of things that have happened. First of all, what the law that we have been implementing for Common Core for the last several years since 2010 is called the No Child Left Behind, which was actually implemented in 2008, but there were waivers and all sorts of things that happened on the federal level without congressional authority, and they've been implementing this agenda prior to new legislation being written. So that legislation is called No Child Left Behind. That was the Bush administration who mandated that individual kids had to meet standards in order to graduate. So there's this great big fight right now. Okay, we have a whole Republican-controlled Congress. The Republicans control the Senate. The Republicans control the House.
Yes.
So what has happened is that, I'm going to just say this, the Republicans, the Democrats, and Obama are working together to restructure the United States of America through education. Okay, so this is basically what this reauthorization is all about. And they call it a reauthorization because they're planning to write a bill that amends No Child Left Behind. And it's called ESA, E-S-E-A, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. So what they're doing is writing a bill to amend that old bill, No Child Left Behind. So they had one in the hopper, okay, for years, several years. It passed in the House in 2013, and that was H.R. 5. And then it was held up in committee. It actually came out of committee in the Senate, but Reid held that bill up. That bill was Senate Bill 1094. But what you have to understand is and of course that was the Democrats holding that, our country wasn't up to speed yet to accept this. They had to have the technology in place. All the grants had to be in place. The teacher training has been going on for 2 years. So they're training the teachers to teach all of this behavior modification and mental health agenda that I talked about in the last show. Yeah. And we'll briefly go through that. But anyway, these bills have been brought forward in this administration, and they are going like, it's like they're like speed demons going through both the House and the Senate. So, I mean, we've been talking about the Senate pushing this bill through, and no one has been invited except the teachers. They're only talking about 14 pages out of that whole bill. They only released 400 pages. That bill is 1,200 pages long. So they're not even talking about the whole entire bill. Doesn't even have a number on it.
Now, when you say they, who are they who are not doing the talking?
This would be the Senate Education Committee.
Oh, gotcha. All right.
In the Senate, okay?
All right.
So they've marked it all up. And so then the House came out with a bill just about a week and a half ago. And Lamar Alexander, he is the senator who is chairman of the Education Committee. He referred to the bill coming up in the House as his kissing cousin, which means it's almost exactly the same as what they're bringing forward in the Senate. Okay, so that's being brought forward by Klein, Representative Klein in the House. So you have these two bills moving forward, kissing cousins, exactly the same, yeah, except for one thing. Okay, they're debating choice, how the money is going to follow the child. Now, if you remember what I said in our last time that we had spent together, that the Title I blanket was going to be implemented over every school so that every child would become Title I. And they were doing that under the poverty guidelines. And if you remember, I said you had to have 40% of a school that was on free and reduced lunch in order to create school-wide, where they can implement a system school-wide. So
you had to have 40% of people on a
free and reduced lunch. So that meant that you had to have 40% children who met the poverty level for the whole entire school to be Title I.
Gotcha. All right.
Okay.
That makes sense.
All right. So what they did was they did the 40% to zero. So what that meant was every child became Title I.
And how is this even possible?
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's a waiver. They're waiving federal law. They can do whatever they want.
Wait a
Remember,
second.
this is Obama.
Who's waiving federal law?
Secretary Duncan.
Gotcha.
He created a waiver that waived the poverty guideline.
Don't let me get you off track, because I know you started at 0700 this morning with a radio interview. But look, you've been full immersion in this for a long time, so you'll have to bear with us who do not speak. We don't speak that language. Is it even legal for the secretary to create this waiver?
No.
Well,
it's not.
Then why
but
is it happening?
It's not legal for Obama to create an executive order to change the privacy law either. But that's what they're doing.
Well, then
they're actually bypassing state government, federal government, and they are implementing this agenda without congressional authority and without the citizens knowing that they're doing it.
Well, this begs a couple of questions. Now, forgive me, and I don't want to get you off track. I want you to roll with it. But look, why are these people able to break the law? Why is there no pushback? Where are the lawsuits? Where are the complaints? Where is Congress? Why are they allowing this to happen, my dear? I don't understand this. I mean, it's either the law or it isn't. And these idiots just go around making it up as they go.
But who has stopped Obama all along? No one has stopped Obama to do anything that he wants. No one has done it.
Do you have an idea? Look, I estimate your IQ, it's somewhere around 150. You know what I mean? Minimum. So what can you imagine is the reason that he just does what he wants? How is this possible? If he can do this, he can do anything else, can't he?
He can do anything he wants, and he's in a position of power that no one is stopping him. And he is creating an agenda that will eliminate our representative government. It's a states' rights, it's a huge states' rights issue, okay? Because when you say that every child is Title I and the money is going to follow the child, that bypasses state government.
All right,
totally bypasses.
Reinforce that point. When you say every child is Title I, just in layman's language, what does that mean? Okay.
What that means is because of the new criteria, and I call it this blanket, every child is Title I.
Right.
That sets up two things. Data collection on your individual child, that the feds are going to data collection on your individual child, but it also marks your individual child for remediation toward government objectives. So it does two things, okay? Identifies your child to meet all the Common Core objectives, which are also the attitudes, values, and dispositions that we talked about. That's when I filed the federal complaint against the state of Pennsylvania because they were testing attitudes, values, and dispositions. They were violating federal law. They were violating civil rights. Okay, do we have a right to think what we want? Do we have a right? Do we have a right to say that we have an opinion about something? So now the government is saying you have to have this, they call it a minimum positive attitude. Okay, you have to have the attitude of the government in order to meet certain criteria. So the government is scoring and remediating personality traits of children at school.
You need to hit this again. Minimum positive attitude rating?
And that's what they said.
Well, whose attitude are we talking about? The children?
The children have to have a minimum positive attitude, and it's being scored to what they call a criterion. They have a standard for honesty, interpersonal skills, getting along with others. It was all geared toward collectivism, the whole thing. I have the whole test. It's geared toward collectivism. It's scored toward group efforts, following the group. Everything has to do with the group. So this is really what it is. And when I talk about these, they're called affective domain. Okay, all that means is that they're testing attitudes and values of your children. They are creating a standard. This is the mental health agenda that Obama put forward a year ago to identify children with mental health disorders, 0 to age 21. Okay, this is where a lot of the remediation is going to take place in the early years. We have to train children, okay? And that's what Charlotte Iserbyt always talks about, the operant conditioning. That's your functional literacy part. But you have to have the right attitudes. So if we're going to change this country from a representative government, we have to have everyone thinking collectivism, socialism, communism, whatever, because the government controls the standard. The government controls the standard. Okay, so this Title I blanket is saying, Johnny, you have to meet this outcome or you're not going to graduate. You're not going to go to school. You're not going to go to college. Okay, this is your upward mobility for your child and their future, because the government has created a standard that you won't graduate. We're moving toward a national diploma. Remember, I think I asked you before, what do you think when the state says that you have to pass a test in order to graduate? That removes all local control. It moves it to the state. The state is creating that standard, but it's a federal standard because they mandated all the Common Core through this race to the top funding.
All right, let me get this straight now. When you say it's moving to the state, you're talking about state with a capital S, or are you talking about the individual, like one of the 48 contiguous states?
One of the 48 contiguous states.
Okay.
Okay. So this is basically what's happened. They're trying to move any control that you have further and further away from your tax base.
Well, okay, let me just ask this. I'm not trying to just gratuitously interrupt, but I want to understand this. Why can't the individual states push back and go, we're not doing this?
They can.
But they're not doing it.
They're not doing it.
Because?
Because a lot of them have accepted all the money. A lot of them have been taken over by the people who want this, okay? The Chamber of Commerce, the Business Roundtable. This is to create human capital of the future. The Department of Labor created these standards with education, which were the functional literacy, okay, the docile worker of tomorrow, the global worker. If we have to compete with China, right? What kind of workers do you have in China and in India? Right. It's the docile worker. We don't want you to complain. We don't want you to say that you have rights. You don't have rights.
If it gets too heavy, just kill yourself.
Yeah, or whatever.
Which is what they do over there. Well, that's what they do over there.
That's what they do, right. You stay in line or you don't get your bowl of rice, right? Okay, so, I mean, this is basically where we're going. It's a complete total quality management. They call it a feedback loop control, okay? What does that mean? They have this database that monitors the children, the standards, the teachers, the curriculum, the teacher training, and they can cross-reference all the information. You cross-reference all the information, so you identify the child if they're not meeting outcomes by the test. You have to validate all that curriculum to be sure that it's teaching to those standards. You have the teacher retraining, okay? Why do you think they have to retrain teachers? Don't you think they had the reading and math and how to teach already in college?
What are the teachers saying about this, though? Are they just going along with it because they want the job? They want the paycheck? Are people leaving?
Most of them are going along. This is one of our criteria where we're saying when teachers are monitoring these children in their attitudes and values, their behaviors, they are really practicing without a license, okay? They are, and this is one of our violations that we were saying in Pennsylvania, that teachers are being primed to monitor the mental health of children in school. These are your teachers turning over your kids to the federal government. You realize that? Because all the information is collected on the local level.
How long is this? Now, how long has this been going on? When did this start ramping up?
Okay, so, I mean, this has been going on a long time, as Charlotte will tell you. This has been going on a long time, but the implementation of the database was actually Lamar Alexander, whenever he was governor of Tennessee in 1989, in the nation's report card, they commissioned all these people to create this database. It had to be a micro record. It had to have cross-reference capability. It had to be standardized in every